There are 9 different fielding positions in softball and baseball. There are 2 classifications of these positions, infield and outfield.
The catcher plays a very important role in the infield. He or she is positioned behind home plate. One of his or her main roles is to stop the ball from getting past the batter's box when it is pitched to the batter and the batter does not make contact. Another main role is for the catcher to communicate with the pitcher. The catcher is one of the only positions in which he or she can see when the coach is giving signals on which pitches should be thrown. The catcher then relays the signals to the pitcher. There are other roles to be played by the catcher. He or she must signal the plays that will occur during special situations, such as first and third plays. Catchers are also responsible for home plate. In the occurrence of a wild pitch, the catcher retrieves the ball and the pitcher is responsible for covering home plate if there's a play to be made there. A catcher should also field any balls within their territory, which is anything in or around the batter's box. The catcher commonly fields bunts, pop-ups, and foul balls. The catcher makes the final decision as to whether or not the cutoff needs to catch the ball, depending on the throw from the outfielder. He or she should also direct the cutoff where to go according to the throws, such as yelling, "right!" or yelling, "left!"
The second infield position we will be discussing is the first base person. His or her main role is to cover first base when a runner is approaching the base. Another main role is to field any ball within his or her domain. Other roles that are significant as a first base person include being a cutoff for deeper center and right outfielder. When being a cutoff for deep center field, the second base person will go into the outfield and be the first cutoff. The first base person will remain in the infield to be the second cutoff. The first base person is responsible for fielding any bunts along the first baseline, not worrying about who's going to cover first base. They are also accountable for catching any foul balls along the first baseline. By looking at the picture, one can see that the team would benefit if the first base person were flexible so that they can cover more ground for inaccurate throws while trying to catch the ball and still keeping their foot on the base.
The next position we will be covering is a second base person. As a second base person, one's main role is to cover second base when the ball is hit to the left side of the field and field the ball when it is hit to the right side. As a second base person, one should also be prepared to cover first base when the first base person is fielding a bunt. Double plays are key for a second base person to understand. They must catch the ball and step on second base simultaneously and then immediately throw the ball to first base. Sometimes the catcher is going to overthrow the ball to the pitcher and the second base person should be ready to back up the pitcher so no bases get stolen in the process. Another significant role as a second base person includes being a cutoff for center and deep left and right outfielders. When being a cutoff for deep left and right field, the second base person will go into the outfield and be the first cutoff.
Another important infield position is the shortstop. There is one main role for the shortstop, and that is to field the ball. Other roles for the shortstop are to cover second base when the ball is hit to the right side of the field, or when the second base person is covering first base, because the first base person is fielding a bunt. Another role as the shortstop is being a cutoff for center and left outfielders. When being a cutoff for any outfielder, they stay in the infield. Double plays are key for a shortstop to understand. They must constantly be in motion, catch the ball, and step on second simultaneously, and then immediately throw the ball to the first base. Additionally, the shortstop must cover third base when the third base person is covering a bunt along the third base line.
The last position of the infield that we will discuss is a third base person. His or her main role is to cover third base. Additional responsibilities lie in being a cutoff for the left outfielder. The third base person is also responsible for fielding any bunts along the third baseline, not worrying about who's covering third base. They are also accountable for catching any foul balls along the third baseline.
Lastly, we will be discussing the outfield positions. There are 3 positions in the outfield: right, center, and left. They all have very similar roles, and the main one is to field any balls that are hit into the outfield. They must quickly field the ball and get it into the infield. Another important role as an outfielder is to have good communication. All outfielders must call the ball if they are attempting to catch it to avoid collisions. They also yell at their teammates to direct them more accurately towards the ball.
To conclude, there are a few key bullet points to remember about every position. Every position is at a certain spot because they each have an important role on the team. Even though it wasn't mentioned in the slides, communication is key for all the positions. When covering a base, an important thing to remember is ball first, base second. If you are focused more on the base, you might not be able to catch the ball, and that could advance a runner, and that's not something that you want.